So I don't intend to keep you here long. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. Hey, please, can you all hear me? Can you please type in the chat so I can know and we can move on? Because I hope to be done with this by 9 or at least 8:45. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Okay, so let's move on. So thank you all for joining me live. I appreciate it. If you are not here, then I wouldn't have this session. I'll just be talking to myself. So if you don't know me, my name is Rita. I think you would know me by now. So I'm a wellness consultant, and my job simply is to let you know how your body works and give you the best dietary and lifestyle recommendations moving forward. So today we're going to be talking about blood pressure readings. Okay. This is probably one of the first things I should have taught or educated you on since we met. But since it's coming in today, I want to review the votes that we got in our various groups. So we are going to open up my WhatsApp web now. So let's see the different votes, because I asked you all to vote. About if a reading is within the ranges of 125 to 140, would you consider that reading to be hypertension? And so many people, if I can remember, so many people mentioned that it's not hypertension, or sorry, that it is hypertension, and that any reading above 120 is hypertension. So if my WhatsApp would respect itself and connect, I want us to review the votes that we got in the groups. Okay, I'm really sorry, my internet went off. So let me go back to recording. Okay, it's still recording. So let's quickly review what some of you shared. If you can see my screen. Here we have that 2 people voted that any reading above 120 is high blood pressure. So if I have a reading of 128, I'm hypertensive. And 10 people voted that any reading that's below 140 is not hypertension. And some people were humble enough to say that they did not know, which is very fine. Let's go to group 2 and see the votes. 2 people mentioned that any reading above 125 is high blood pressure. And 2 other people voted that any reading below 140 is not hypertension. And then 1 person was humble enough to say that they did not know. So let's go over to group 3. Group 3, they were mostly texts, but many people mention that any reading above 125 is high blood pressure. Okay, and over to group 4, we have 5 people saying that any reading above 125 is hypertension, and 5 people again saying that any reading below 140 is not high blood pressure, and 2 people were humble enough. So I think the first option, which is yes, any reading above 125 is leading. And let's check out group 5. So we have 1 person saying that any reading above 120 is hypertension. 3 people did not agree. 1 person was humble enough to say that he does not know, which is absolutely fine. So what do I have to say? I hope you can all see my screen, and I also hope that you can hear me. I hope I'm not talking to myself. So let's read this text together. You can get your numbers checked at the hospital or the pharmacy, which is something that we already know. And you can also get a home monitor for yourself, all right? Now, once you know your numbers, you use the blood pressure charts to see what they mean. Now, for someone who has low blood pressure, their readings are going to be between 70 to 90 millimeter per mercury, which is systolic, and 40 to 60 diastolic. Now, what is a good, healthy blood pressure range? Some people were saying that it's 100. Some people mentioned that it's 120. An ideal blood pressure, a healthy, a good blood pressure ranges from 90 to 120 millimeter per mercury. Okay, so 90, not 100. Okay, 90 to 120 is a good, ideal, healthy blood pressure. Now, if someone has a reading, this is what I asked you all to vote for me. If someone has a reading between 120 and 140, they are not hypertensive. This person has what we call pre-high blood pressure. Now, are they likely to be hypertensive? Yes, if their reading goes over the ranges of 140 and above. So if you've never gotten a reading below, or should I say above 140, chances are that you are not dealing with hypertension. You are simply in the pre-stages of high blood pressure. And hypertension in itself consists of stage 1 and 2. So if someone has a reading of 140 to 160, we call that stage 1 hypertension. And if someone has a reading of above 160, please, I'm talking about the systolic now, not the diastolic readings. Let's focus here. Okay. So if someone has a reading of above 160, they would be in stage 2 hypertension. And it's usually at that stage that you would be required by all means to take your medications every single day. If you are not a stage 2 hypertensive patient, chances are that you are not required to take your medications every day. Now, I know that I have some of you that I've spoken with tell me that once your BP goes above 120, you get so scared, and then you just take a pill immediately, to reduce that blood pressure reading. Is that the best way to do it? My sincere answer to you is no. Genuinely, I feel like most of us mismanage and misuse our hypertensive drugs due to fear. If your reading is between 120 and 140, you are not even supposed to be taking medications. What you are supposed to do is to watch your diet and also incorporate physical activity to reduce your blood pressure to an ideal blood pressure range. Before someone would be required to take medications, their readings should be between 140 and above. Okay, so I hope that this is clear. Even though some of you are in the pre-hypertensive stage, you are still taking your medications, which I don't think is ideal, but some people, your doctors actually recommended this for you. Sorry, I just lost power. Hopefully it comes back soon. But I know some of you in the pre-hypertensive stage, your doctors actually recommended it for you. So besides that, I think that genuinely most of us misuse our drugs. You are not supposed to be taking them, but you do, which makes things worse. it increases your chances of, having side effects. Well, please note today that if your readings are between 120 to 140, please, you are not dealing with hypertension. The people who are hypertensive are those who have readings above 140. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the reason why this is so in a little bit, but this is basically what I've been trying to explain. So if your reading is between 90 or lower, then we call that low blood pressure. Okay, and if your reading is between 90 to 120, you have a good, healthy, ideal blood pressure range. All right. And if you are between 120 to 140, you are in a pre-hypertensive stage. It's not hypertension. If it goes higher than that, then you could develop high blood pressure. But in this stage, you are not a hypertensive patient. What you are advised to do is to simply watch your lifestyle habits. Start eating properly and exercising and sleeping better. Your blood pressure would reduce. You do not need drugs at this stage, even though most of us take already. If your readings are above 140, then you are a hypertensive patient. That is, you are diagnosed with hypertension, okay? And you need to do something about it as soon as possible, all right? So I would like also to say that the fear of hypertension kills most of us. Your medications are not always good for you, and they are not always the best option. As a hypertensive patient, your very first recommendation to you, your doctors, their very first advice to you would be start watching your diet. And if over a period of months, if they've advised you to start watching what you eat and also start exercising, and you still do not, adhere to that advice, and your blood pressure keeps going up, then they can recommend medications for you. But some of us, even in the pre-hypertensive stage, are already on meds. Some of you are already on meds every single day, okay? Medications are not always good for you. I am not against them, but sometimes you really don't need them, okay? It's much better for you to fix or to manage or to reduce your blood pressure via dieting and physical activity other than going through the medications route. Because when you start taking your meds, it's quite hard for you to get off them, okay? Except, of course, if your BP reads 140, which is, the standard of a hypertensive patient, 140 and above. So you actually have no business with medications if your BP is within 120 to 130. But if you are taking them, you have to continue, because at this stage, I cannot tell you, explicitly go off your medications just like that, okay? So if we are not on BP meds yet, and your readings are between 120 to 130, you don't have a business with high blood pressure medications. Please don't start what you cannot finish, okay? I remember a client one time was telling me that he was recommended a medication with his readings at 125. And then he went to a pharmacy, and then they told him at the pharmacy that he's not supposed to be taking those medications. Sorry about that. And then they told him at the pharmacy that he's not supposed to be taking those meds, because when he was talking to me, he told me that anytime he takes them, his side effects, increases. So if your readings are between 120 to 130, you really don't have a business taking hypertensive meds. I would simply advise reduce your salt intake, increase your potassium and magnesium, start eating properly, and start exercising. Your BP would reduce, okay? And also, we also have to remember that high blood pressure in itself is not a disease, but it's an indicator, okay? Except your readings are above 140. Hypertension is not a disease in itself. It simply indicates to you how fast your heart is beating to get blood, moving through your arteries, okay? And it also indicates that, hey, you are likely to suffer from a stroke or a heart attack or a kidney failure. It's not a disease in itself. High blood pressure or hypertension is simply an indicator that, okay, this is what is going on with you, you should try doing something about it before so and so takes place. Okay, so let's move on. I would genuinely say that most of us, the fear of hypertension will kill you faster than hypertension itself would kill you. So please try to take things easy. All right, calm down. You are not doomed to this disease. High blood pressure it's not an ailment. It's not something like malaria or like cancer or, like ulcer, that we are diagnosed and we take medications for, because when you start taking BP meds, it's quite difficult for you to get off them. So they are simply indicators. Your readings are indicators that, hey, this is what's going on in your system. Try doing something about it before you are likely to suffer a stroke or, and so on and so forth. So let's analyze together. I'm also keeping an eye on the chart just in case anything pops up. But let's analyze this together. So this is Mr. Sheyi. He's 50. He eats more of a plant-based diet. He exercises 30 minutes per day. He manages his stress level. He meditates, that is, he tries to recollect himself, Sorry, my internet took me off again. Are we still together, please? Can you tell me in the chat so I can know? Can you see my screen? Can you hear me? I'm waiting for your responses. Can you hear me? Can you also see my screen? Are we together? Am I talking to myself? Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Fatima and Mrs. Chema. Okay, so let's move on. So this is Mr. Sheyi. I was saying that he recollects himself, practices meditation. He sleeps about 7 hours every night, manages his weight, but he suffers from ulcer, which causes his BP to increase sometimes. On an average, his BP reading is 135 to 140. So let's remember Mr. Sheyi and let's move on to the next person. Now, this is Mr. Anthony, also 50 years, but he eats more of an animal-based diet. He exercises once a month. He's always stressed out because of bad government in Nigeria. He's overweight, spends most of his time working at the table. That's basically living a sedentary lifestyle. He suffers from atherosclerosis, which is basically the medical term of plaque buildup. Remember plaque from our webinar, right? So atherosclerosis is basically the medical term for plaque buildup. And because of his plaque buildup, it causes his BP to increase sometimes. And his BP readings are between 135 to 140 on an average. So I'd like to ask you, between these two people, their readings are the same, but their lifestyle is not the same. And their cause of hypertension is also not the same. Between these two, who do you think is more likely to suffer a stroke in the long run? I'd love to read your comments in the chat. Who do you think between these two, Mr. Anthony and Mr. Sheyi, who is more likely to suffer a stroke? Mr. Musa says the first person. Mr. Musa says Mr. Sheyi is more likely to suffer a stroke. Mr. Ayobami, Anthony. Okay, so I would agree also that it's Anthony. Now, the reason their BP readings are the same, but their lifestyle varies, drastically. Okay, Mr. Musa. Yeah, the second person. So even though their readings are the same, their lifestyle, the way they live their lives are very different, okay? And even though they are the same age as well, I forgot to mention age, because when I asked this question in the groups, so many people were saying that age also plays a factor. I agree. When you grow older, your BP tends to increase, but there is no, or should I say, as it is right now, the medical field that I know of today, there is no different charts. There is no different charts for a 60-year-old person, a 70-year-old person. We have only one chart, which I've already shared with us. This chart right here. So even if you are 70 or you're 80, high blood pressure is high blood pressure. Pre-hypertension is pre-hypertension. Ideal blood pressure is ideal blood pressure. Okay, we don't have a different chart for a 70-year-old or an 80-year-old, even though I do agree that as you get older, it's possible for your blood pressure to increase, which is very, very normal. Okay, but we don't have a different cutoff. Okay, as it says here, this chart is suitable for adults of any age, as the cutoff point for diagnosing high blood pressure does not change with age. All right, so I know some of us had doubts about that. Your age does not affect, it doesn't give you a different chart to follow. Okay, high blood pressure is high blood pressure. Pre-hypertension is pre-hypertension. Ideal is ideal. Low blood pressure is low blood pressure, and that's that. Okay, so like I was saying before, even though their readings are the same, they have a very different, way of living, and this would cause Mr. Anthony to suffer a stroke. The chances of him suffering a stroke is much greater than, Mr. Sheyi, simply because of the way they live their lives. So at times, your BP is going to increase. It's not every day that you have a stress-free day. Some days, Nigeria is going to cause you more stress than you are used to, and your blood pressure would increase. It doesn't mean that you should now take twice your medications or you should start panicking. One off reading, you are a human being. Okay, so please take it easy with yourself. Your blood pressure is not always going to be so stable. It's not always going to be 120/80. Some days it's going to be 125. Other days it's going to be 135. When you try to get back into your normal routine, sleep well, try to eat a salad, rest. Your first motive should not always be, I need to take my hypertensive drug. Okay, so please take it easy with yourself and be at peace. Genuinely, I know some of you are doing your best. You actually watch what you eat. You're like Mr. Sheyi. You watch what you eat. You exercise as much as you can. You try to sleep well. You watch your weights. You are healthy. Okay, so even if your reading is 135 to 140, please don't panic. All right, so this is just my advice to you. So let's move on so we can close on time. Another thing I'd like to tell you is try and find out what your body is asking you for. See hypertension as an indicator, like I've said before, and less of a disease in itself. Some of us, our problem is not always plaque. Okay, some of us, we don't have that, intense plaque buildup because you genuinely watch what you eat and you exercise. For some of you, the reason for your hypertension is just you don't sleep well. Some of you are suffering from insomnia. Okay, and if you don't sleep well, your BP would what? Increase. Some of you, you are highly, highly under stress, and you need to watch your stress level. If you can get your stress in check, you will see that your blood pressure also would decrease. So it's not really that you have a plaque buildup per se. Some of you, what your body genuinely needs is physical activity. You've been living a sedentary life for so long, and your body is basically begging you for some movements. Okay, so what you need is exercise. For some of you, you actually need to watch your salt intake. Okay, you need less salt and you need to increase your magnesium and potassium. And some of you, the reason for your hypertension is not that you are a hypertensive patient. It's simply that you are either dealing with ulcer, or you have like a kidney problem, or even sometimes when you have malaria, your BP will shoot up. All right, so sometimes you need to treat your disease. Like blood pressure in that situation is not a disease. It's simply indicating to you, okay, you are not feeling very well. Your heart is trying to pump more blood around your system so that things can work properly. If you have a high reading when you are sick, it doesn't mean that you're a hypertensive patient and you should reach out for your BP meds, okay? You simply need to treat that underlying illness first, and you would see that your BP would automatically decrease. Okay, so I hope that we are learning something today. I would also like us to take a quick review and advice on how to enhance the power of our wellness pack, because someone shared a review in group 3 with us today, and he also mentioned how he was able to enhance the efficacy of the wellness pack. And I asked him for permission to share this here with us. I would also like us to listen to him if we have the time and the patience for that. Okay, so I hope this is recording. Gosh, I hope this is okay. It's recording. So let's go back to group 3. So Mr. Augustine, he mentioned that he was dealing with hypertension for 10 years, and he bought the wellness pack and it helped him. And he's going to explain how it helped him. But he said his readings before were 157, 160. So from our charts, blood pressure charts, we know that Mr. Augustine before really was a hypertensive patient. Okay, his readings were above 140. Okay, so let's listen to what he had to say. He showed us his reading recently of 127. And then someone asked him what's the secrets behind his improvements, and he gave us a voice note, but we are only going to play one because of time. Okay, so let's listen to him.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So sorry, I'm driving now, so I cannot type. So I think I will leave a voice note regarding to your question. The actual fact there is that first, when I started,
Please, can we hear? Can you please confirm if this is audible enough? I want to know if you can actually hear it. I don't know if my computer audio is loud enough. Please confirm. Okay, thank you. I really don't want to waste your time tonight, so let's move on.
I tried that well-being that I bought from Rita. So I noticed one thing. Though I'm somebody that usually do exercise once in a while, but I used to take one medication. It's called Exforge for my blood pressure. But even as a guy, it doesn't control it. I still read sometimes 40 over, least then it was 40 over 95. But mostly I get 157 over 95, sometimes 140 over 103, like that. Even as a time I got 193 over 103. And it happens when I don't exercise for a long time. It will shoot up, to go high. You'll be seeing 161 thereabout. So, but the exercise, one of my challenges, because of that Exforge, I usually take like 160 over 10 milligrams. So I find I used to have headache. So they advised me to reduce to 160 over 5. I start taking that 160 over 5 for a while, but it doesn't really reduce it. So I just taking it fake. Let not be I don't take any medication. But if I don't take it at all, it goes high. Or taking it keeps you within that 140, 157 over 95, within that range. So I noticed, first thing I noticed when I start taking that webinar is that my immune becomes stronger. So I noticed though, I started having sleepless nights, so I complained to Rita. So she told me to be taking it in the morning. So I changed my medication. I started taking my high blood pressure at night time, start taking my medication in the morning. So I find out that I become very hyperactive, kind of, I don't feel tired like before. Like when I was taking only my blood pressure and exercise, sometimes I feel very lazy to do it. Sometimes I feel weak in my bone, so I will just stop. But when I take the webinar, I become very active. So I was able to walk, start taking my medication. Then I now decide to, there's one voice note somebody shared, a doctor in a platform. So I listened to it, talked about the effect of maggi and salt for someone having high blood pressure. So I eat salt a lot. So I know that I eat salt, I like anything. So I decided to start controlling it. It's difficult. I won't lie to you. It's not. It's like the food becomes tasteless. The first week, second week, third week, I struggle with it. 1 month, I struggle with it. So like I like eating. I'm not enjoying my meals. So I stopped eating out. I usually eat food at home. So I struck my family, let them, they become salt conscious. So I reduce my intake. So I noticed, first thing I noticed is that I become active. I was able to do my exercise regularly. I increase usually I do exercise once in a week, sometimes once in 2 weeks, sometimes twice in a month. So I find out I can be able to do the exercise in that first period of 1 week that I start using that medication. I become very stronger, I become active. So I start doing my exercise 3 times in a week. What I do, I wake very early. I just walk on treadmill. Or if I cannot be able to do that in the night, you can just, if you don't have treadmill, you can walk. Walk this and sweat. Just make sure you're active. So I just keep it up that way. I increase it from 2 times to 3 times in a week. But now I've maintained it twice a week, to be convenient. So the first thing I noticed that there's usually this pressure, like slight pain I normally feel within my chest. That one stopped. The headache went away. The dizziness, like sometimes I feel dizzy, stopped. So I noticed the blood pressure first dropped within 130/85. Suddenly, I started noticing, I just maintain the exercise, control my kind of food, avoid those kind of fried food, and reduce my salt. Maggi self, I don't even I cook soup, I use more of ogiri. So Maggi, I reduce it to the minimum. Salt, sorry, call came in and I was disconnected. So it's, one thing I've come to notice based on these 3 experiences that if you look at yourself, most of us that started having blood pressure, especially when you are above 40, our Nigerian style, this is what I've learned within the period of time. I travel a lot outside, so I noticed something I learned. We often stay in one place most time. When I started having high blood pressure when I travel overseas because the comfort outside, you hardly trek. You just park your car under the car park, you go to the lift, you come back, you drove to the mall, you go to your business, when you park, you just enter the lift. So there is no time for activities. So I started noticing I started feeling dizzy. And like when I went to the doctor, an Indian doctor then, he just told me my lifestyle. He just described my lifestyle. I said, how do you know? He said he knows. He said that's the cause. That's how started the high blood pressure. So most of us, this is how it started. I noticed we are not active. So we stay one place, and Nigerian food is more fatty. Mostly oil, fried food, all those kind of stuff, and other junk food that we eat. So it's from the explanation Rita gave us the other day, the first time I joined the class, I now have a better understanding what someone was telling me outside the country, an Indian doctor. So I have so I begin to understand that even though you are taking the medication, stay in one place will not give you any result because you are still eating the same kind of food lifestyle, eating much sodium, which can be attained from maggi and the salt, especially for those of us that like our food to be very salty, like salty things. Or we eat in a restaurant that this food they use ajinomoto and the rest, all this amala food that have a lot of salty substance. It's not good. And we don't work out. We stay one place. So you find out fat grows in our arteries. She described 3 areas. So I begin to understand my body. So when I started taking that medication, what that medication did was that I think it boosts my immune system kind of, and it detoxed me. For that period, I was stooling. My stool became watery. So that's what that medication did, this well-being. So I think it's kind of detox. It cleans the body system. But if you are taking it and you just rely on it, and you are taking your blood medication of your high blood pressure, and you are not active, you won't get a fast result. You might have a result, but it might take time because you are still eating the salt. You are eating the salt. You are eating much salty food. You are staying in one place. You are eating fatty food. So you are regenerating those fat into the arteries or blood vessels. So it's growing back, and you are not taking medication. So it's not going to give you a quick result. So what you notice first is that you are now killing the body because of that medication that we are taking, that high blood pressure medication, and without being active with it. So the thing becomes very, very difficult. You understand me? So that is what it is. It becomes very, very difficult.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there so that we can move forward. Maybe I would share his voice notes to the group so that you can listen to it at your convenience. So what he's basically trying to say is that first, for the wellness pack, he's basically advising that in order for you to boost the efficacy of the pack, you also have to watch what you eat and also incorporate physical activity. And also incorporate physical activity into your life, okay, and not live, such a sedentary sort of lifestyle, okay. And he also mentioned his salt intake. Now, concerning salt intake, what I have to say is, I know some of you know that salt is not good for you. Some of you already you watch your salt intake, so salt is not the problem. But where your body would really need it is, it's not just enough for you to just reduce your salt. Try also to increase your magnesium and potassium. And those of you on your wellness supplements, you already have your magnesium and potassium in your multivitamin. So perhaps for Mr. Augustine, it wasn't already a problem. Magnesium and potassium was not a problem already because he was on the wellness supplements. So if you are not on the supplements, there are other magnesium and potassium foods that you can eat. And I've talked about this so many times. You can just go through my Facebook page and see it there. If you want me to do it again, no problem, but I've already done it. There are so many magnesium foods, so many potassium foods, so many foods also that can clear your arterial plaque as well. So even if you are not on your supplements, if you can just take exercising seriously, and if you can just watch what you eat, reduce your saturated fats, don't eat so much of red meats and omega-6s like butter and mayonnaise and processed foods and fast foods and salty foods like snacked foods, all these things. If you can just be cautious of that, reduce also the amount of times that you take sodas like Fanta and Coke and Chapman and all these things. All right. So if you can just be strict with it, as long as your BP is not above 140 and you actually need a BP medication, okay, even if you don't have the wellness supplements, it's manageable. There is hope for you still. And with all the information that I've been giving you since we first started, except if you are in my group 5, where we just met a few days ago, then with all the information I've been sharing, if you can just take these things seriously, you would improve. Genuinely, you would. Okay, except if the cause of your BP is some form of underlying disease or something else. But if you can watch your stress level, like all these things I've mentioned before, try and figure out what exactly your body is asking you for. Some of you just need better sleep. Some of you need, to reduce your stress. Some of you need exercise. Some of you need less salt, more magnesium and potassium. Some of you need to treat whatever illness it is that you are battling with. Your BP would reduce. Okay. So I have in the chat, someone says they can't hear me. Can you hear me? Please, can you hear me? Or is it just them? Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Chioma. All right, so I want to talk about a few things concerning salt. So 75% of our salt comes from processed foods. okay? Not really that you are actually adding your salt. So 75% is actually from, outside food that you eat, okay? But your body is actually still needs salt, okay? I wouldn't advise that you completely eliminate salt because it is important for your muscle and for your nerve system. You just have to keep it at least no less than 1.5 teaspoons a day, all right? If at all you want to go above 1 teaspoon, not more than 1.5 teaspoons. All right, so how can you reduce your salt? Like I said earlier, salt largely comes from snack foods, even bread. Surprisingly, bread is one of our greatest sources of salt. And earlier, I shared a PDF sort of on how you can bake salt-free bread at home. Maybe I'll share that again for those of you that have the time anyway, because I know it's not everyone that would have the time, to start baking bread at home. All right. So bread is part of them. Pre-made meals, that is basically snack foods, and also the salt you add while eating. Some of you just sprinkle salt until your ancestors tell you to stop. You just sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. You don't know if it's above 1 teaspoon in a whole day. And I don't mean 1 teaspoon per times that you cook. I mean 1 teaspoon in a full day. It shouldn't pass 1 teaspoon. Okay. Recently, or not recently anyway, but when my dad was, started taking his health seriously after his stroke, I started cooking his foods differently. So my mom, she would just separate our food from his food, very little salt, sometimes even no salt, and he would just eat it like that. Over time, his tongue kind of adjusted. Please excuse me. Okay, sorry, I just had a bit of a distraction there. All right, so I was saying that over time, his tongue just kind of adjusted. So you can do with little to no salt, okay? And stock cubes like maggi also contain salt, so you can try to reduce that as well. Avoid baking, which is basically ultra-processed meats, things like hot dogs, hams, bacon. I know my dad used to buy those for us a while ago, but then he stopped. So if some of you eat those at home, please try to reduce your intake. Cheese, smoked meat, smoked fish, baked beans, canned spaghetti, pizza, ketchup, mayonnaise, canned soup, cereals as well can also contain a high level of salt. So what are some tips for cooking with less salt? There are some low salt stock cubes, that you can use. And you can also make your own stock by boiling your meats without putting additional salt into your foods. So let's say you're preparing something like stew, you steam your meats first of all. You add things like onions and maggi cubes and salt and whatever ingredients or spices you want to put into your stock. If you are then adding it into your tomato paste, I'm talking about stew preparation now. You don't have to add another salt again into that stew, after you've already put in your stock, if you get what I mean. I'm sure the moms here will probably understand what I mean. So you don't need to add an additional salt. It's just one of the ways that you can, cut down your salt intake or, while cooking. Okay. And then you can also reduce your mustard, ketchup, soy sauce. Reduce also the amount of times that you eat out. Okay. Things like, what's it called? Pastries. They contain high salt, high sugar as well, flour as well, may not also be good for you. So less takeaways, cook more at home, and less ultra processed foods as well. Okay. For those of you that like to snack a lot, please also try to watch the way you snack. Okay. And use fresh herbs and spices instead. I will give you a list of fresh herbs and spices you can use to substitute salt and maggi. And certain things like when you want to fry like eggs, Sometimes even plantains, you don't have to add salt. Your tongue eventually will adjust, okay? So let's move on. Some substitutes for salt. We have onion powder, garlic, thyme. You can take a screenshot of this because I know somebody will ask for it again, after this. So you can just use your phone or take a snapshot of this, or you can just come back to the replay of this session. But you have onion powder, garlic, thyme, cinnamon, parsley, nutmeg, turmeric, basil leaves, ginger, crayfish, uziza leaves, locust beans, cloves, oregano, paprika, celery seed. So these are just some substitutes, okay? And this is also one of the healthy versions of salt I would also recommend for you. I don't sell this salt. I'm not affiliated with low salt brand in any way. It's just a healthier version that I would recommend. And why is it healthier? Now, salt is actually sodium chloride. And in that sodium chloride, salt contains 40% sodium, 60% chloride. Now, you don't have to worry about the chloride. In this 40% of sodium, low salt removes 66% of this 40%, okay? So it's mixed up with the other percentage. It adds more of potassium to give it that salty flavor. So you are basically cooking your meals with the same amount of salt, but this time it's more healthy. It's healthier for you. So it's like a healthier version of salt because it contains less sodium, okay? And I'm also not affiliated with this brand. So if you want to get this salt, perhaps you may have to look on Jumia or Konga. I know they would sell, or probably look at some supermarkets near you to see if they have it. Okay. I don't sell it, so please don't ask me. And then lastly, some exercising. Mr. Augustine also mentioned that he increased his the amount of times that he exercises. Now, in the full version of the voice notes, he mentioned that in the past, it's not as though he wasn't exercising, but he didn't have that much energy to go out and exercise. Okay, it was more of weakness, and also he mentioned pain within his heart area, within his chest area. Okay, so the wellness pack sort of helped to give him more energy, because when he was first taking it, he was taking it at night and he could not sleep. So the energy sort of kept him up awake. So I advised him to switch it to the morning so that he can reserve that energy to do all the things he wants to do, during the day. So he had more energy to exercise. So my point basically is, for you to exercise, you need energy. So try to improve on your energy giving foods so that you can exercise more. And if you exercise more, it actually gives you similar effects as your blood pressure meds. So things like walking, okay? My dad doesn't really go out, outside of the gates. He just walks around the compound. Up to like an hour, he's still walking, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, okay? If you have a swimming pool in your house, you can swim. If you don't have, well, you can jog, or you can brisk walk, or you can cycle. Mr. Augustine also mentioned that for things like, if you want to buy something from a store near you, instead of like using your car to go, you can just walk there. Even though my dad, he won't go, he will send me or one of his children to go. But maybe you can just, use it as a form of exercise for yourself. You can just decide to walk there by yourself, something to just keep you active, okay? Not sitting down on your laptop, on your computer, 6-7 hours at work, you're back home again, you are still living that sedentary lifestyle, okay? So basically come to the end of this session. My slides are done, 14, just 14 slides. I'm so happy we finished before 9 p.m. So do you have any questions, please? Questions? And also, how did you see this session? Was it valuable to you? Do you agree with this blood pressure charts? Do you agree with it? I would love to hear from you before I end it. Any comments, any questions? If there are none, we can just go ahead and end the session. Okay. Someone says they agree with the charts. Yeah. So if your readings are between 120 to 140, surprise, you don't need medications. You just need to fix your diet and lifestyle. Okay. And also, how do you see hypertension now? Do you see it as something you should be so scared of? I know it's something I really have to hammer on because most people are scared of hypertension. The minute your readings go high, it's like, wow. It's like as if you will suffer a stroke right there and then. Please, it's not true. Okay. I know it can be scary sometimes, but please take it easy with yourself. Okay, any more comments, questions? You're welcome, Mrs. Sharma. I'm happy you found value for this. You're welcome, Mr. Musa. Yes, that's what I really want to do, to demystify hypertension. This motive we have that if you're hypertensive, then you would never recover. That's a very big lie. I don't know who started that. Who said that? Please, that's not true. It's very much possible for you to reverse, manage it, okay? If you so wish to, if you are willing to put in the work anyway. Anything else? Can we end this now? You're welcome. I know I have to also improve on my weekly calls. I know I've slacked so much of that. I will do my best to call you, those of you on a wellness journey, to know how you are doing. Okay, so if we don't have any other things to add, I will go ahead and end this session now. Thank you for coming, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Oh, yes, I would send the recording to the group. Okay, so let me just upload this to YouTube and then you would have to replay. Okay. All right, so take care, everyone. Bye.